Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, Aurora. No dad jokes well, I'll tell you my dad joke, Aurora, and then you can chuckle at it. And then we can actually get in the meat of the episode. Meat of the episode being another pun on this. A really good friend of mine said, "Hey, really thinking about going vegan." I said, "God, that would be a big mistake." Thank you. Thank you for
That's good. I like it.
Chuckling at my terrible dad joke.
I like word puns.
Yeah. All right. Is your brand consistently quietly killing your competitive edge? Did you know? According to Profit's 2022 Brand Relevance Index, 64% of consumers cite shared values as the primary reason they have a relationship with a brand. Yet most brands remain static for fear of disrupting that connection. Today on How to Founder, we'll be talking about strategic brand disruption. I'm your host, Chris Franks. Stephanie is somewhere, I think, in Italy. Anthony, I don't know what Anthony's doing. Anthony had to bail out last second, but we are joined today by Aurora Winter. She's built multiple seven-figure companies and authored Turn Words into Wealth, exploring neuroscience of communication. She helps founders understand how strategic communications drive brand power, turning carefully chosen words into movements, legacies, and revenue. Aurora, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. We're glad to have you. And thank you for laughing at my joke. I thought it was terrific.
Yeah, it's a great dad joke. Well, I'm glad to be on with you, Chris. And my intention is to make enormous contribution to all the founders, especially those who are in the process of raising capital, so they can learn how to nail their message and get yeses instead of no's when they go to raise capital.
We were just talking about that before, about this idea that it's a skill set that a lot of founders, that particularly technical co-founders, like people that are very, very smart people, and that could do things technically that I can never even dream of.
Yeah.
They lack oftentimes just the very basics and fundamentals of telling a story, which is, I think, and really, I guess that's probably my first question for you, Aurora, is like, tell me what a brand is in the context of being a founder, and particularly early, right? If I'm starting a company, I want to go raise money, I'm trying to raise capital. What does that even look like as far as trying to build a brand or a brand story?
Well, I want to answer the brand story question, but first, for those of you skeptics who are listening to this, I want to grab your attention and let you know with a little story how important this episode is and how much value you're going to get. Most founders have no clue that the value of their story could increase the value of their shares by as much as 27 times. No, not 27%, not 2.7 times, but up to 27 times. So pay attention to this episode, because if you can learn even one of the things that I'm going to share, it could dramatically improve your result. Every founder I've worked with, because I do media coaching and one-on-one media training, every founder I've worked with who had started with zero capital raised has raised 7 at minimum figures, and often 8 figures or more. So, and they would go from blah, 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 blah. You like the person, they're smart, you have no clue what they're doing, to at my event, sometimes people in the audience actually invested in their company right then and there because they were like blown away by the concept. So back to, what does a brand mean? So a brand, here's the thing. Most people don't understand that you do not actually own or control your brand. And why I say that is because your brand lives in the mind of the marketplace, and you do not own that mind. There's not a lot of room in other people's minds for your brand. So your brand is actually perception. Perception is reality in branding. So what is the perception of your business. The perception of your business is usually your powerful story, your YouTube channel, your book, your website, and first impressions on those things.
So it's such an interesting point. We've discussed it a bunch sort of on previous episodes, but I came up in the world of growth marketing, and growth marketing was about science, not brand. It's really about, if you could serve the perfect ad to the perfect person at the time, and really use the analytics. And I've sort of changed my thought on that in a world where everything is driven by AI. That really authenticity matters. But I think that a core question that I struggle with is, to what capacity is a brand related to a company, and to what capacity is related to a founder? And I think I'm starting to believe now that the founder has to be a part of the brand story, or founders. What do you think? Am I on the right track or no?
Absolutely, I agree with you, Chris, because people are interested in human stories. Stories stick in the mind. Stories become viral. Statistics don't stick so much, but stories do. Like, most people can remember Oprah's story, going from poverty, terrible abuse as a child, becoming, the first billionaire. Her cover on every Oprah's O magazine. That was unheard of at the time. Oprah knew the value of building a brand, and she built $1 billion brand as a consequence. But today we can look at companies like Dior. Dior has a brand, but there's a danger in becoming stale. Everything that is living is changing, is evolving, is growing. You can't hold steady. There's no such thing as steady. You're either growing or you're shrinking. So small tweaks to your brand, small improvements, even a conversation about making a change, like Dior has a certain thing going on and they changed it. Like, looking at the runway, it's like, well, that's really out there. I'd never wear that, but it's alive, right? And so I encourage people to think of their brand as a plant, as something living. You got to water it, you got to nurture it, and you also have to keep on repeating your core stories again and again and again. I spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley, and everybody was thinking about MVP, minimum viable product. I challenge people to think about a masterful, visionary pitch. That kind of MVP will raise 7 or 8 figures. So like you were saying, Chris, is it the brand, is it the business, or is it the founder? It's whoever is willing to speak up and be the visionary. It's the Steve Jobs of the company. Steve Jobs and Apple are inextricably linked because he was the showman. He also had a bunch of great ideas, but he would practice his Apple pitches for 3 weeks. He's running a huge company. Did he have time? He made time to practice his pitch because Apple launches matter that much. And I would challenge every founder listening to this, your message, your pitch matters that much. You should spend 3 weeks of the next month working on it. I'd be glad to help you with that. That's what I do, media coaching. Most people are like aware of the 80-20 rule. 20% of your activities will bring 80% results. And I challenge people to do the 20% rule again. So 20% of 20%, 4% of your activities will bring you 64% of the results. And in that 4% is your pitch, your story, your confidence, your clarity as you're giving it as well.
So the only thing I want to, let's say, even challenge you on, but I think it's something that we as founders, we struggle with, which is everything that we're taught as leaders and to be a CEO is that it's about the team. It's about us. It's about we, and we're going and building this together. And as much as I would love to talk about how incredible I am as a founder, I'm trying to build that value into the company, because the company is the thing that will be valuable. But yet, and I agree with you, but it's so hard to figure out, to what capacity am I talking about me, which can feel narcissistic. It can feel incredibly selfish at times, versus talking about the value that the company's trying to provide in the world. I'm with you in the sense, like, I think that it has to come from a human being because it has to be authentic. But to what capacity am I talking about me versus talking about the company and what the company is going to do.
You don't have to talk about you at all, but somebody has to be willing to actually give a passionate performance. It's not enough to give dry statistics about what the company is trying to do. People apparently have an attention span of 8 seconds. So don't start off with your name, your company name, how many employees you've got. You've already lost them. Start off with something compelling. Like, what is it that you're up to? What is the problem that you're trying to solve? But don't cloak that problem you're trying to solve in numbers and data only. You can add those, but cloak them in human stories. The human stories of your team that's working on this. Maybe they worked until midnight last night. That can be part of a story, but also the story of the transformation that your company provides or is seeking to provide. I think we're not in the information economy anymore. Information is dead. We're all about transformation. Transformation is where stories are so strong. My background's in film and television. I think most people are aware of the hero's journey story, which is most movies are the hero's journey story. So can you come up with a hero's journey story for the founder or for the company or for the patients or clients or people that you serve? In what way does this take people from struggle, from difficulty to a solution? In what way does your company, product, or service take people from hell to heaven? And then don't make the typical engineer's mistake in terms of communication of describing every step along the bridge between hell and heaven. You want to first grab the broad strokes. What is the hell? What is the problem? What is the solution? And let people understand the value of that solution for human beings. And then if they ask you, you can go into more explanation. But so many super smart founders that I work with, they get all trapped up in the what. And people, sorry, I'm just trying to finish the add more value. Listeners are not the same as you. So when we are communicating for the benefit of other people, we need to use the neuroscience of communication, which I wrote about in some detail and turn words into wealth so you can understand the neuroscience of communication, but also understand people filter by 4 different things and different people prioritize different things. And if you don't touch on each one of these 4, a quarter of your audience won't be listening to the rest of what you say. So people who are more engineering, they tend to focus on what. People focus on who. The executors focus on how. And CEOs and founders, people like probably you and I, focus on why. Why are we doing this? So in the first few seconds, probably in the first 30 seconds, you need to address all 4 of those things. Otherwise, 1/4 of the people are not listening anymore because they're waiting for, well, why are we doing this? Or who does this impact?
So, and I think it's a good moment to kind of get more specific, which is Simon Sinek famously says, start with why. It's kind of the definitive statement around branding. I think for founders, the why of the founder and what that drive and passion is about why they would want to go do this job, I think can inform that. But specifically, if I show up as a founder and just be like, look, I want to, what my why is, I want to make $1 billion. Like, I'd like to be a billionaire. That's it. Would you guys give me funding? Like, that's
not, right? That does not work.
Exactly. So when you say, and I like the context of these 4 filters, but specifically, as I'm starting to think about how I tell my story as a founder of the company I'm founding, give me some ways to start to think about how I can frame the what, the who, the how, and the why.
All right, well, let's first do the hell to heaven, and then we can drill into those 4 things, and we can use you as an example if you're willing.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Get a little free coaching. So what is the hell that people are in before your company helps? And just skip forward to the heaven that you take them to.
Well, so specifically for how to founder is that there is a set of knowledge, skills, abilities that no founder ever learns, that nobody ever teaches you. And so you can feel incredibly alone and isolated. You can read every book on the planet about entrepreneurship, et cetera, and even business, and miss some of those really hard things. And so you can fail as a founder, not because you're not smart, because you just have lacked those practical pieces of advice that Anthony, Stephanie, and I try to give. Heaven is you're experienced. You go through this stuff. You realize when you can't stand and talk to your co-founder that that's normal, that there's ways to get around that we can work our way through it. And success oftentimes is how you go about that process. So I would say that's my heaven or hell to heaven for how to founder.
You want to do your company as well?
Oh, I mean, prompt is too early for, I don't know. That's
right.
just chaos to non-chaos, I hope.
All right, so that was a great first draft. So how I would coach you to make it sharper is don't mix the part of the solution when you're talking about the pain. Keep the pain really pain or problem or hell, and then shift all the way to the heaven and keep that all heaven. So it might sound more like being a founder can be lonely, full of failure, despair, and you can end up quitting unless you listen to How to Founder, where we're going to give you the insights, the knowledge, the support, the community that will help you thrive as a founder and succeed. Whereas without us, you might give up or fail.
So it sounds to me like what you just did was made the problem statement more visceral and emotional even.
Yeah.
And then provided the clear solution from that in the second half. Was that a fair assessment?
Exactly right. Yeah. So engineering people tend to avoid talking about emotion. Got to trigger emotion. Emotion is why people buy. Emotion is why people remember. Emotion is why people connect. Emotion is why people actually do anything. Although studies show that a split second later, they may justify why they did it logically, but they're actually prompted to take action. Even the action of simply listening to this podcast through some emotion is going to solve some problem. Okay, so then we want to go through the other four filters. So the hell to heaven is the why. We covered that. We also covered the who. It's for founders. Okay, so then what about the what and the how?
We do a bunch of silly podcasts, and all you got to do is, hit that like and subscribe.
That's right. What? It's a podcast, and how? Just like, subscribe, and tune in. So there we've covered those 4 points. And now if you were raising capital for How to Founders, once you've covered those basics, the 4 filters, and that hell to heaven, now you can say, and my name is, and I'm here to raise capital, or whatever is the engagement piece that you want. Or the other thing you can do is you could then give a keynote speech and say, here's 3 things I learned by interviewing 100 guests on How to Founder that I think you'll really find interesting. And then you've set up who you are and why How to Founder matters. And then you can go on in more depth and give more content in a keynote, or you can ask for funding or whatever the case may be. But people can only listen for about 20 minutes. That's the other element of neuroscience to keep in mind. So it's nice to keep your content in small chunks and make each chunk like a little story. And then check in with the audience. If it's one-on-one, I can check in with you, Chris. But even if you're giving a keynote speech that's longer than 20 minutes, maybe you're talking for 60 minutes or 90 minutes, you can still have a little moment for the audience to make eye contact, to kind of nod, to say, amen, or to get a little engagement so that you're breaking it into chunks. A major mistake people make when they're planning a 60-minute talk is they plan a 60-minute talk. Don't do that. Plan 5-minute talks. Yeah, 5-minute talks that add up to 60 minutes. That'll serve you much better.
So I think part of the purpose of this podcast, I think this is a really interesting framework, but is when and how to evolve a brand. I think we set it off the top, but let's just cover this, which is we have the tendency to say as founders, like, look, we invested, we hired a designer, we got a good logo, we even did our brand story, and we have our brand book. We're good. Like, we're set. We don't even need to think about our brand for the next several years. And the only time that we really need to think about evolution of a brand is once we really get big and people start caring about us. Is that fair, or should we think about brand evolution as part of our overall maturation process as founders?
I think you should think of it as part of the maturation process. I think a big mistake founders make is they think their brand is their logo. Your brand is not your logo. Your brand is not the colors on your website. Your brand is not your font choice for your letterhead. Your brand is not the color of your business card. None of those things are your brand. Your brand is a story. That story has to be heard in the marketplace to land. When you notice that your story is getting stale, you must refresh it. It can still be the same general theme, but it needs to be refreshed. How to Founder podcast is a perfect example. So, we already covered what the How to Founder brand is, podcast brand is, but each week you do a fresh episode. That's branding in action. You're interviewing somebody new, you're adding more value, but you're still doing it on this same thing. It's the same with the fashion design. They're coming out every year with new, or twice a year with new models, new fashions, some hit, some miss. But again, if it's not alive, if it's not evolving, if it's not being talked about, it's dead. So I challenge founders, yes, nail your origin story, nail your hero story, nail some great myth busts, but then always be looking for, how did you transform this person's life? How did you transform this client? How did you raise capital? And even be willing to share your setbacks, because a hero's journey has dragons. It has struggle. It has setbacks. I mean, read the book Shoe Dog. There were so many setbacks on Nike's journey. And that makes people connect to the authenticity. We don't invest emotionally in a nameless brand that only shows perfection. That doesn't land as true.
It's not a good story if I was like, yeah, I started a company and now I'm rich. Like, it's great. Like,
it's not a story at all. Exactly.
Yeah. It's like, well, what, I don't know. Is that hard? I don't know. This is easy for me. Yeah, that's not a great story. We don't really.
Exactly. Yeah. So you want to have your hero starting with the struggle.
I want to dig into this just a little bit, because the idea about a brand representing you as a founder, but we change as human beings, and the companies change and evolve over time. And to what capacity do I need to mindfully go out and adjust that story? And I hear you when it gets stale. I don't know that we're always the best people to know whether or not our story is getting stale. We get bored of saying the story, but we get bored of everything as founders. So what is that, like, that trigger point? And then along that pathway or evolution, are there moments where you're like, this is the right time for you to go back and revisit that story?
Well, I have a lot of experience with this because I've launched multiple companies. I actually love, there's on YouTube, there is a fantastic video about a hermit crab. And I think this exemplifies what happens to us as founders, because most founders start multiple companies. So you build a company and you're in it, you're all cozy, and then you exit because Chris helps you exit. And then you got to get out of that shell. And a hermit crab is very vulnerable while it's looking for another shell. You have to dash as quickly as possible and find a bigger shell, because you've outgrown the company that you just exited and you just sold. So we are always vulnerable when we're changing shells or changing businesses, and that can be part of your hero's journey, right? But what honestly, I've done this so many times, and my main thing is I notice when I'm bored. That is the first clue. But then I notice, how are people reacting? Like, if people are, you will get bored before the audience does. And that's an opportunity for you to decide to master your message and pay attention to the littlest details, tighten it, tweak it, add emotion, see if you can connect viscerally with it. But then if you are bored and the audience is bored and your revenue is trickling, that is a good sign that you need to shake things up, freshen things up. And doesn't necessarily mean that you need to pivot that to another business, but you need to dig deeper and stop being so shallow. Find some new stories, or perhaps somebody new in the company wants to be the spokesperson if you have a team. So pay attention. I mean, when I'm practicing stories, I even do it in the grocery lineup. I'll tell people about a book I'm thinking about writing or about a podcast that I just did, and we'll see if they kind of go, yeah, right. Or if they go, tell me more. They lean, you can see people light up. So pay attention to that. I don't know if that answers your question. Maybe you want to explore that a bit more.
I think it's a good framework, which is there's probably not one moment. There's not a moment that says, here's the single moment that I need to start evolving my brand and looking at it differently. I do want to ask a slightly different version of the same question, though, which is, let's say that I do get to that point. So I'm paying attention and I get to a point where I now realize that it's time for me to evolve my brand. How do I do that? And I don't mean that, but obviously I need to continue to be authentic. But as I tailor my message, is it better for me to tailor my message to a more aspirational? So in other words, my core audience, is it better to continue to leverage what I know about my core audience or go after some aspirational bigger market, et cetera? In other words, if we know it's about, the story is about the people that hear the story, right? It's about them. They own it. Who should I be thinking about in this world?
Well, I think it is about story, but how I like to break it down so it's easier to understand as an entrepreneur or founder is actually about solving problems for your ideal purchaser, client, customer. So every time you solve a problem, there's always another problem. I'll give an example in a second to make more clear. And if you can solve that problem, then you're going to need a story about the second problem. And if you solve that second problem, then your core audience or clients are going to have the third problem. If you want to solve that third problem, it'll need other stories. This is a way to do it so that you're not just shooting in the dark. But here's a couple of filtering questions to ask. Like, what are you really good at? Or what is your company really, really good at that you still love doing because you don't want to build a trap? And who is that worth the most to? So I'll give a little example from my company, Same Page Publishing. So I noticed that first-time authors spend 3.5 years writing their first book. And I'm like, well, I can help them solve that problem. I noticed that some people who are dyslexic had a lot to say, but they hated writing. So I created the spoken author method. I interview people.
We have a podcast. Pretty much it right there. The whole entire, yeah.
Okay. So then created the spoken author method, interview people, turn that into a book. Okay. So and now my company focuses on best-selling award-winning books for people who are making a difference. All right. So you have your book. What next? What's the next problem? Well, you actually want to get the message out there. So I book people on podcasts. Okay. So after you get on podcasts and you've got your book, then what do you want to do next? You want to have your YouTube channel. You want to have it nicely done. You want to have, okay. So those are a series of problems that I solve in my company. So what is it for you? Every time you solve a problem, you will want to collect stories. So I have collected stories about people who were unable to get their book off the ground, who now have got 100,000 readers and fans and American Fiction Awards and that kind of thing, or who grew their business by 7 or 8 figures. And then the next story about getting people on podcasts, getting people on the YouTube channel. So every time you solve the next problem, there's another problem. And as you're solving that other problem, there will be stories and it will naturally evolve your brand. And the filter I recommend is the filter of money. What do people want more of that they're willing to pay for? So it doesn't really help to ask your cousin or your nephew or your mother about some aspirational goal. It helps to ask the marketplace, okay, I've solved this first problem for you. Using How To Founders as an example, I've solved the problem of feeling alone, getting discouraged, maybe quitting. Now you're connected. You've got this ongoing stream of revenue, of information from people who have founded companies. You're feeling encouraged. You're feeling connected. What's the next problem? Well, maybe they want your help growing their company, or maybe they want your help, Chris, exiting their company. I know that's one of the services that you provide. So that needs more stories.
So I like the context of just saying, really, a brand evolution is about the problem and about how that problem is solved. And if you start to solve a bigger or larger problem, that's one of those clear breakpoints of when a brand refresh would need to happen. All right. So as we start to wrap this conversation up, and we're going to go to the speed round in a minute, I just want to give you an opportunity to say, as a founder, as I'm thinking about brand, I'm thinking about story, you've given us some practical advice about the 4 filters, talked about the heaven to hell, or hell to heaven, excuse me, about how we solve those problems and about how we pitch. What additional things do I need to be thinking about as a founder, starting to build or eventually evolve and change that brand as the story starts to change?
I think you should think about collecting these stories of the difference that you and your company has made for your clients. So collect stories of transformation and then really craft your $1 million message. You need to be able to deliver your $1 million message with passion and precision. After you've been on a nonstop flight to London, you didn't get any sleep because you were beside a woman with a baby who was crying, and you're speaking to an audience of 500 people with no sleep. You got to nail it. You have to practice it. I really want people to understand it's a skill set, like playing basketball, like ballroom dancing. Everybody can walk, but not everybody can ballroom dance. What's the difference? It's practice. Your $1 million message, your masterful visionary pitch requires that level of commitment and practice.
I love it. All right. Are you ready for this speed round? Do you like our dramatic speed round music? Dun, 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 dun.
I do.
Very dramatic. All right.
Very dramatic.
Revenue drops 15% post rebrand. Do you revert immediately or start to wait maybe and see if the brand resonates?
Patience.
Your brand attracts wrong customers. Rebrand to repel them or educate them better?
Raise prices.
I like that one. Market shifts. Update brand to match trends or maintain position as a contrarian?
Contrarian.
Ooh, I like it. Founder's personal brand clashes with the company brand. Align both or separate completely?
Wrong founder or wrong company.
Right, exactly. Doesn't feel like that's a real thing. Testing brand messaging, run small focus groups, or launch and iterate publicly?
Test.
I like it. All right, founder fundamentals. I've learned a ton from today's episode. We talked about the power of story. You mentioned the opening that the story can increase the value of your company by 27 times, not percent, 27 times. You don't own your brand. Your brand is a story and it's owned by the people. It's not color, it's not logo, it's not tagline. A brand is about human stories. I love the 4 filters, which is it needs to answer what, who, how, and why. And I think that you and I agree that of those, that why becomes really critically important. It needs to discuss from hell to heaven, give a visceral, emotional framing of the problem, and then a logical approach to solve them. And brand positioning is about problems you solve and for who. Great stuff. Deep dive resources, Positioning, The Battle for Your Mind by Al Reese and Jack Trout. Zag, The #1 Strategy of High Performers by Marty Neumeier. But of course, none of those really matter, Aurora, because you've written 10 books. We're just going to go and see those books, right? We're going to go to samepagepublishing.com. And then where else can we find your books?
Turn Words into Wealth is available wherever books are sold or on Amazon. So if you want to take a deeper dive, I recommend that resource. It'll teach you how to turn your words into wealth and 7 different ways to make 7 figures with your message. If you're a founder and you'd like help crafting and practicing and nailing your $1 million message, you can sign up for a free business breakthrough call with me at bookcall.biz. It's free, and we'll explore if I can help you. Bookcall.biz, or you can go to Same Page Publishing and see all the clients I've helped and learn the stories about how I help them and get some other free resources at samepagepublishing.com.
Love it. Thank you so much for joining us today, Aurora. It's a really good conversation. And for all of you listening out in the world, we really appreciate you. We are very humbled by the work that you do as founders, and we're just very happy to be there along the way. If you like us, then go and subscribe, hit that like, hit that subscribe, follow us wherever you listen, LinkedIn, LinkedIn, YouTube, etc. And we like to say we believe that you are the pioneer of economic prosperity. We're incredibly grateful to be here with you along the way. So thank you, everybody. See you again tomorrow. Anthony will be back with me. I know show will get a little worse tomorrow, but that's okay. All right. Appreciate you guys. Have a good one.